All right. This is Bob Clarkson. Is that so? Let's explore maybe something a little bit out of the normal. We're going to talk about a couple of things. One is, what does it mean for the Lord to be my shepherd? But that raises another question. As my shepherd, what does God really care about? So this morning I was in a meeting and the discussion was about uh, does God care about football? Now, you've probably been one of those people who will actually pray over the outcome of a sports event. It may be a football game, a basketball game, whatever your favorite sport is. You may have occasionally asked God if He would bring the outcome to a win for your team. And of course, just like you have the farmer out in his field and he's praying for rain because he needs rain desperately for the sake of his crop's growth and his profit. At the same time, we got people across the other side of town who are praying for no rain because they want to have a big party and a barbecue and it's an outdoor event and they want sunshine. Now, God's amazing enough that He could probably make it rain on one farmer's field and not the rest of the farmers in the neighborhood, or rain out there in the farm area of town and not rain on the side where the party's going on. But you have people who are mutually interested in their own weather pattern, asking God to bless them with the pattern that they want. Does God care about the weather? Well, what is the weather about, and what are the sporting events about? And why are we praying for God to change those things? Well, all right, as sheep, we can't really talk, we can only bleat. So let's consider the human side of us, and we'll get back to the shepherd thing in a moment. But as we're looking at life, we're in a relationship with probably several people, and some of us are also in relationship with God. And in a sense, we're all in some kind of a relationship with God, in that every one of us is a child of God that walks on the earth and ever has walked on the earth or ever will walk on the earth, because once He breathes life into us, we become His living children. Obviously, He doesn't sire us like we sire our kids, but He sires us by breathing the breath of life into us. Now, as our parent, so to speak, He does have an interest in our well-being, but He also has an interest in our pleasure. Now, that doesn't mean that, like my earthly father, who might have the right kind of connections to actually throw the ball game so that we would win because they've paid the refs to make some calls that would adjust the outcomes, because God doesn't do seedy, sordid, unrighteous things like that. But there's always that situation where we're looking for and asking for our Father to do some special favors for us. Now, does God care for all of His children? I say yes. Now, some children we may favor over others. Some say that's wrong. I disagree. I favor my children that want to hang out with me and include me in their fun times or their sorrowful times more than the ones who almost never show up and could seem to care less about whether I showed up in their space either. Now, that's the dynamic, or the basis of relationship in the first place. Now, then we have two kinds of relationship. We have the kith and kin blood relationships. And then we have the I just fell in love relationship, or I walk into a room and someone else walks into the room and we immediately connect and we don't even know why. And it's not about physical or sexual relationship. It's just, whoa, I want to be near that person. I feel an aura about them that makes me want to be in their presence. Well, this brings it all the way around full circle to what is the significance of God caring about a football game or a basketball game or a weather report that withholds or pours out lots of rain. It comes back to who is God in the first place, and then who is God in our place. Now, of all the people in the world that have ever been born, some like their parents and some hate their parents, and some think their parents are great and some think their parents are awful. But the kith and kin relationship is one that, okay, we're stuck with you kind of in some seemingly appropriate way, and yet many times we have far more in common with people we've met long since our childhood than we have with our brothers and sisters or cousins or aunts and uncles or any of those kinds of blood kin related people. So where does this all come together in the economy of God? Where does God put this relationship thing? It's obviously not on a shelf, but it is obviously being showcased. Because if you look at the Bible and you read the Bible, some like to read through it cover to cover every year. I'm not one of those. I rather pick up and read spontaneously. I'll think of Daniel or some character in the Bible and say, oh, I want to go back and read that story again. I want to see if I can find some more interesting tidbits about who Daniel was or how much he loved his God, or how I might improve my relationship with God. Not that I'm looking to imitate Daniel, but I turn to the writings in Scripture spontaneously that are kind of drawing me to them in my spirit. So, relationship is sourced in one primary emotion, the most powerful emotion, the most driving emotion, the highest emotion available to us. And that comes back to the scriptures that say God is love. Not just that he has it, he is love. He's the very essence of love. And love is the highest emotion, the most desirable emotion to all of us on earth. We want to be loved. And then we want to be embraced. We want to be accepted. We want to be respected. We actually would like people to think so much of us they'd actually try to imitate us. We want to have influence. And we want to have the contact, the touch. But the touch is really more about somebody obviously caring about me or accepting me as Bob, just as I am, not accepting me only if I will change things that I do, things that I say, how I do them or how I say them. But they just are okay with me. Well, that brings us to another aspect of relationship that's pretty critical mass. Does God care about the football game? Does he care about the sports event? Does he care about my successes in business? Does he care about... Well, I asked the gentleman this morning, does God care any more about the outcome of football than he does about cancer? I don't have an answer that I'm going to give you on that. I have my own opinions on that, but I'm going to keep that to myself. But when it comes down to it, God can affect the outcome of a game. He can have the coaches go to the go to the recruiting bench and recruit the right men or women, or transfer them in at the last minute and go to the tournament and change the outcome of the tournament, because all of a sudden the whole team dynamic has changed because there have been some new players, superstars, that were introduced or interjected into the mix at the last minute. And that's obviously going to affect the outcome of the tournament. But we come to relationship where, from the starting point of, hey, I have a birth date. Yep, it's way back there. But I have a birth date. And when I came into the planet, I started out as an infant, couldn't do anything at all for myself, had difficulty communicating. I was so shocked when I was born I didn't talk for over a year. But that may have happened to you and others as well. But the key is, however limited my communication skills were, I made enough noise that I got food, I got shelter, I got warmth, I got a place to sleep, I got a little bit of hugging, a little bit of touching. And let's start out with there's two words that I would use to describe the beginning point of humans, and that's our child phase. And there's two aspects of being a child. One is being childish, and the other is being childlike. Now, Jesus kept promoting having the children up front in his meetings, up close and jumping around right up close to him, knowing that it was going to make the old people, a lot of them, a bit agitated. And he said, suffer the little children to come up here. I think the word suffer was on purpose. Just get over your bad selves. Pay attention to what I'm saying and look past their noise or playing or whatever. But I want them to be comfortable in my presence, as comfortable as you are. This isn't an adult meeting. This is a relationship meeting. And relationships include our children and our grandchildren. Sometimes you may have wished that you could have started with the grandkids instead of with the kids, because they were easier, they were more fun, and you could spoil them and give them back to the parents, and you didn't have to deal with that, all those discipline issues and so on. But so we're born, and until we somehow overcome it, we're childish, and the childish person is the one who is selfish. That's a good way to remember the characteristic. They both have an ish in them. Childish. Now, childish demands or causes me to demand of others whatever I want to satisfy what I want. That's my toy. That's my book. That's my blanket. This is mine, mine, mine. And we, almost all kids, scrap over what's mine at some level. Now, you'll have some very shy and retiring kids that may sit in the corner and let people steal their blankets or their toys. But they're the exception rather than the rule. And probably if they're pushed long enough and hard enough, they'll strike back. Give me back my stuff. But then we have the other word that's about being a child, which hopefully will transcend all of my decades of life. And that's childlike. Jesus encouraged even adults to approach him like a child, not childish, but childlike. Well, does God care about the difference in that? Well, sure he does. Childlike is fun-loving, people-loving, relationship-loving, and somewhat other-caring. I want to share my stuff. I want to share my cookie. I may not let you sip on my milk because I don't want your mouth on my straw, but I'll break off a piece of my cookie for you. So, does God care about childish or childlike? Absolutely. Does God care about the outcome of a ball game? I will cross a line and say sometimes, because sometimes he can use the outcome of a ball game to increase someone's faith. By the same token, if the wrong team wins as I see it, he might be teaching me patience or cooperation or any one of a number of good character traits that I need to learn by losses. I was meeting with a person earlier this week, and I guess it was on Sunday, and it struck me. I was looking at my glass of milk, and I realized I used the phrase for decades: the glass is half empty, or the glass is half full. Well, the half empty is for the complainer who never has enough. The half full is one who's appreciating what is in the cup even though it's not full. And all of a sudden, like a bolt out of the blue, it struck me. And I almost, it wasn't audible, but I think the Spirit of God was actually speaking through my thoughts. Bob, your cup is never half. Your cup is always full. So is everyone else's, quite frankly, but for sure, your cup is always full. The question is, what is it full of? Well, it's full of some things that taste good and some things that don't taste good. But he said, Bob, your cup is full, and you now find that the things that used to be bitter to you are sweet. So the adversities that used to be making the drink hard to drink now have become the pleasurable, like the sweet creamer that you add to your coffee. Your cup is always full, and the adversities, the calamities, the diseases, the broken things are the things that give it the best flavor, because you now see them as the best thing that happened to you instead of unfortunate. Bob, you never learn anything. You never learn anything significant through your successes and your smooth, placid, easygoing, everything's going great circumstances. You only learn significantly when you're encountering difficulties, failures, faults, problems, learning how to cope with difficult things and difficult people, learning how to love in the midst of carnage and ruin and storms and emotional storms. Does God care about a football game? Does God care about cancer? What God cares about, as I now see it and experience it, I just lost my wife a few weeks ago. She's in glory. Now I am really free to spend more time with God than ever before and enjoy the relationship I have with Him more than ever before. And I miss my wife. She was wonderful. They thought we were on honeymoon all 28 years that we went to the conventions of her sorority. The new people thought, how long have they just gotten married? For 28 years that went on. Now, the last 2 years she hasn't been able to go, and she died just short of our 30th anniversary. But the dynamic of God is, did God care that I lost my wife? Absolutely. Does He care about me and the sorrow and grief that I experienced because of losing my wife? Absolutely. But it hasn't reduced or diminished my affections for Him or my love for Him or my desire for Him at all. If anything, that is the most important thing to me, because even though I've been almost alone for the entire several weeks since, Family hasn't come, friends haven't come. Well, an occasional visitor, but it's like I've been alone, but not lonely. Because when I'm not doing these Is That So video presentations with you, God and I are talking about these things between times. There'll be another one in a few days. My videographer is in Florida, for Pete's sake, and I'm here in North Carolina, and I'm using my smartphones and his software to bring it all together. But my time is spent in this relationship with God, and that's really what God cares about. He really cares about how much you really love him, how much you approach him childlike, not childish. Childlike, you just want to crawl up in his lap. You just want to spend some time talking to him. You want to let him tell you some stories. You want to let him be not just the father, but be the granddad. I think kids love their grandparents more than they love their parents. Like we love our grandkids more than we might love our kids, or so it seems. But the whole thing is, God created relationships, and that's what he cares about. He cares about sportsmanship more than the end of the game. We've become so corrupt, all we care about is who wins, and we don't care how we get it. That's childish. Adult, childish beings. Grow up. I put away childish things. I didn't put away childlike things. Now some adults get all twisted. Well, man, you shouldn't act like that. That's, you need to act more like an adult. That is not so. I am going to be fun-loving with children who are on the floor in the kindergarten room where I'm teaching, or the high school students ready to graduate this year. I'm going to have fun with them. I'm going to enjoy a childlike adult connection with them and encourage them never to give up their childlikeness. I'll finish with this thought. I may be getting older, but I refuse to grow up. I'm going to remain childlike and be invited right up close and personal with Jesus in every one of his meetings, wherever he's going and I happen into the space with him. That's so.